1, 2, jab! 1, 2, jab! Hook! Oh, okay. Oh, hi there. Today is my first big boxing match since the fall of communism, and my secret weapon to win it is this. A very special candy bar, whose crucial ingredient comes from, as you see behind me, a slaughterhouse. Yes, a candy bar from a slaughterhouse. It's called Hematogen. Wanna know more? Hematogen, also spelled and pronounced gematogen, is a Russian delicacy from a pharmacy. It looks like an ordinary brown chocolate bar, but instead of cocoa, it contains blood, which is responsible for its dark color. This Russian bloody candy's unique ingredient is called black food albumin, which is a protein obtained from defibrinated blood of cattle, so from cows or bulls' blood. So, why did Russians come up with an idea to produce blood-enriched candy bars? Hematogen was invented as a miracle sweet bar which was to increase the level of hemoglobin in the blood, especially in children, to prevent anemia. Hematogen is not a novelty. It started to be produced many decades ago. Most Soviet children grew up eating this cheap candy bar. However, the history of hematogen starts in Switzerland, where in 1890 Dr. Adolf Friedrich Hommel prepared a mixture of bovine blood and egg yolk called Hematogen des Dr. Hommel, in English Hommel's Hematogen. This prototype of hematogen wasn't a candy bar, but a liquid tonic. The name hematogen comes from Greek hematogenum, which means the birth of blood, giving birth to blood. Hommel's hematogen was a remedy for almost everything, from stomach ulcers through diabetes, malaria, rickets, and anemia. In Switzerland, which was then a poor country, blood diseases which resulted from poverty were very common. This pharmaceutical product, food supplement, was highly advertised on postcards and in newspapers worldwide. Even in Nigeria. It quickly became popular and turned out to be effective. Such hematogen was also sold in Russia, then the Soviet Union, the USSR, at the beginning of the 20th century. However, in 1920s, the Soviet Union began its own production of hematogen, and it was a production on a great scale. Soviets created two versions of hematogen. One was tonic, the other one was a candy bar. Nevertheless, today not many people remember that Soviets also produced hematogen in its liquid form. It's because hematogen tonic was discontinued a few decades ago and didn't survive the Soviet era, the collapse of the USSR. But hematogen as a candy bar remained and is still available in Eastern Europe. It's worth noting that hematogen tonic didn't survive not only in the Soviet Union but also in Switzerland and other countries where it was previously easily available. It's not clear why it just disappeared. Perhaps drinking blood in the West quickly lost its charm and modern science was more appealing. It seems that the liquid version of hematogen was present in the Soviet Russia longer than in other countries. This candy bar, that at the first glance resembled and still resembles chocolate, appealed to children, while hematogen tonic was more like an adult version, but taken by children too. In the USSR, hematogen tonic was also made from defibrinated blood, and apart from blood, it contained alcohol and other components, which gave hematogen sweet, a little toffee-like and chocolate-like flavor. At least this is how some older Russians remembered its taste. Sometimes it was even added to drinks. Such bottled hematogen was pasteurized in hot water and was sold with a quality certificate. It was often recommended for anemia and general weakness and usually taken as 2 or 3 tablespoons a day. In the Soviet Union, hematogen in a form of a sweet bar was not only meant for children. Bars of hematogen could also be found in Red Army soldiers' rations during the Second World War. Hematogen was used to speed up the recovery of the wounded soldiers, as iron in the blood, so-called heme iron, is well absorbed by the body. After the war, the whole nation suffered from malnutrition, and the need for hematogen to improve nutrition, especially of children, was even greater. As far as hematogen tonic is concerned, it was probably used during the First World War, as it had been highly advertised worldwide in the years following the war, although we don't know to what extent it was accessible then. Hematogen for decades was prescribed by doctors to children with low blood levels of iron and low hemoglobin to improve their health. People didn't care about the key ingredient, blood, because they had just nothing else to choose from for preventing and treating anemia in Soviet pharmacies. Hence, this sweet dietary supplement was hugely popular during the fall of the Soviet Union and could be obtained even during the food shortages. But it's not only availability that gave hematogen its popularity. Many Soviet children simply enjoyed eating this sweet bar sold in pharmacies. Hematogen was a good ersatz for typical sweets like candies and chocolate, which weren't at great abundance at the time, and compared to them was very cheap and easily accessible. In the Soviet cookbook, there was even the recipe for energy bars with hematogen. Hematogen was mixed with water, sugar, egg yolk, flour, butter and walnuts. The mass was baked and, after baking, cut into bars. The basis of the classic hematogen was aforementioned black food albumin, cow's or mainly bull's blood. Its content in the product should be at least 5% per 100 grams, which is per 3.5 ounces. And although this blood component wasn't a secret, on packages it wasn't just bluntly written processed cow's or bull's blood, but the specific word albumin or bovine albumin was used. So we cannot be sure if all the parents and children were aware of this key ingredient. However, many of them said they knew it well. Other ingredients in the classic version of hematogen included condensed milk, sugar, starch or glucose syrup, and vanillin. Since the Soviet era, hematogen has changed to some extent, but the dried blood is, or at least should be, used. In the Soviet Union, black food albumin needed for hematogen was mainly produced at meat processing plants after the bulls were slaughtered. This way, Soviets made use of whole animals and blood didn't go to waste. Animal blood was transfused into a flask and shaken for several minutes. This is how the fibrin protein was separated. The final product was black food albumin, fibrin-free dried blood which no longer coagulated. And as such it was, and is, used as a main component of hematogen. After privatization, after the fall of the Soviet Union, many meat processing plants closed their production of albumin. However, the demand for hematogen was still high, so some companies started to look for albumin suppliers abroad, for example in Belarus and Germany. This is how hematogen has survived to this day. And how does the production of hematogen look like? All the ingredients, apart from albumin, are heated, mixed together and cooled. Then albumin is added. The mixture needs to be cooled prior to adding albumin to avoid the risk of coagulating the blood. The following day, the mass is formed into bars. Today, the producers don't stick closely to the original recipe of the erstwhile medicinal bloody snack. But as I already said, the 5% of dried blood albumin per 100 grams should stay unchanged. Now producers sell different types of hematogen for many needs, not only to prevent anemia but also for better concentration and even for beautiful skin, depending on what other components are added. Hematogen, apart from its classic version, is produced with various additives like nuts, for example hazelnuts, coconut, dried fruits like raisins or prunes. Some producers coat their hematogen with chocolate or spike it with vitamins and minerals. Hematogen is quite often fortified with vitamin C, which improves the absorption of iron from albumin. Hematogen is still available at the pharmacy, but compared to the past, today you can also come across it on supermarket shelves. However, it may be safer to buy it at the pharmacy, because some of its versions from the store might not meet the requirements for such a product, and may lack albumin at all. If you want to buy the real Hematogen, you just have to check if the product contains albumin. On the package of my Hematogen, it's a Lithuanian version, it's written Bovine Alimentary Albumin. This bar, which weighs 50 grams, contains 2.5 grams of this albumin, which is okay, as it's 5% albumin per 100 grams. Maybe today Hematogen is not as omnipresent as it used to be, but it's still popular and easily available in almost all former Soviet republics like Ukraine, Belarus, Lithuania, Latvia, and of course Russia itself. If you are lucky, you can even buy it in the United States, especially in the New York City. Just look for it in the Russian markets. You can also easily buy it online. However, don't expect it to be as cheap as it used to be. You can even find Ukrainian edible gel Hematogen, which also contains albumin. There is still that nostalgia and uniqueness that let Hematogen exist. Many Russian parents continue to buy their children this bloody treat, but Hematogen is enjoyed by adults too, by those with active lifestyle, by students, and by those who just adore its taste and texture and treat it like a dessert. But it shouldn't be eaten in unlimited quantities. It's recommended not to eat more than 1 bar a day for a kid and 1.5 for an adult. Albumin is one thing. Hematogen is packed with sugar, which is never healthy for you. So, how does the Hematogen bar taste? Hematogen, which has a chewy texture, has sweet flavor of fudge, milk toffee candies, sometimes compared to that of Tootsie Roll, with the metallic note aftertaste like some sweet beef liver aroma. In 2000 in Russia, there was a change in law according to which products with biologically active additives, BAA, albumin is such an additive, stopped being medicines and fell into the category of food products. Such change made the life of manufacturers easier, as licensing procedures got simplified. One more thing, Hematogen we are talking about has nothing to do with the Hematogen FA, which is multivitamin with iron found in the US market. Okay, let's see how it works.
Touch gloves. Fight.
So many stars. Is that a Sputnik? Oh,